So we have incredibly interesting orthodontists as a part of Smile Doctors and all throughout our industry, one of which is Dr. Farah Carr. I am so excited to welcome her to the podcast today. Welcome, Dr. Carr.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Now, you have an incredibly unique background, and I think a lot of orthodontists do. Some kind of go the typical biology route and do everything to get to dental school and then become orthodontists. Yours is very unique, and it's become a real integral part of how you've built your culture, your practice, everything about it, and why you're so successful. I'd love to dive in today so that our listeners can understand a little bit more about who you are and your approach and the way you think about it. Give us a little background on how you got into ortho. What was your career before? Kind of all that stuff.
Sure, absolutely. So I always loved art. I knew that I was going to, ever since, I was 5, 6 years old, I would always tell my mom that I absolutely loved art. And so I actually studied fine arts when I went to university. And my mom's an artist. My sister's also an artist. And I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with that level of creativity, but it's where my passion lay. And so when I finally completed my art degree, I decided I wanted a little bit more. I was also interested in architecture. So I wanted a little bit more of a technical training when it came to being involved in development of spaces. And so I went ahead and I got a master's degree at Georgia Tech in architecture and project management. And so that organically led me down a path of becoming a project manager for a building development company. And I got to work in that industry for several years before kind of everything around us changed in 2008. And a couple of things that happened all at one time. So my brother, who's older than me, was a dentist and had opened his own practice, and he had asked me to help design his space, and I was more than happy to do so. He and I are very similar. We're very people oriented. And what I found is working in development, I was spending a lot of time reviewing drawings and contracts and not being around people. So I wasn't really happy at the time. So while kind of helping him with his practice, and also not really feeling like this is where I want to spend my time is constantly in this cubicle by myself reviewing documents. It all just happened where I was like, you know what? I need a change. And I knew I wanted to do something that was creative, artistic. I knew I wanted to be around people. I knew I wanted to actually do something that where I could help people, but also use my background. And that's where I decided to go back to school at the young age of 28 to become a dentist. And while in dental school, because I was so much older than everybody else, I became class president and I was mama bear, and really realized that everyone is coming from not everyone, but the vast majority of my class was coming from a science background. And And I really started to see that difference where I was coming from this art background, where you really start to see the difference in how we approach things and think about things. And I was lucky to have an amazing mentor who was an orthodontist and got to do research with her. And Dr. Day Felipe, and she really showed me that orthodontics is the perfect blend of art, architecture, project management, and science. And so for me, when people read my bio, we were speaking about this earlier. They're like, this is kind of confusing. I'm like, absolutely not. It makes perfect sense. Right?
I totally agree because ortho is an art and a science. Yeah. And it's so the patient has to love their smile and their finish. And we also have to make it extremely functional and correct. Oh man. So what an amazing background you have.
Right.
How with that, I've heard the term thrown around a little bit, design thinking and along with the project planning. What does that mean to you that it probably doesn't mean the same to the rest of us lay people?
So let's focus on the design part. So one of the things that I have found so striking is when I'm around a lot of other orthodontists or I'm asked to come visit clinics, is there's so much thought and intention that goes into the way we practice orthodontics as far as how we want to deliver care, the tools we want to use, the bracket system we want to use, and really just what I kind of say, like overall umbrella geek out stuff. And then I find that the experience that your patient is having is often an afterthought and not given as much thought. So what for me, when I think design, I think about creating the vibe. When you walk into our space, what is your vibe? And are you intentional with that vibe? Because when it comes to design, nothing is happening accidentally. So for example, even as basic as space planning, we consider traffic flow. We think about how humans move, right? Through a space and where we want to maybe guide them when they come into those environments. You'll see this a lot in hospitality when you go into like an amazing hotel. Nothing is by accident. Not even a single piece of art is by accident. So for me, the design part is, when people say just design, it's not just the paint on your wall or the art that you put up. It's really being intentional about you're creating a vibe. Our preteens will understand more that they're like, oh, this is a vibe, Dr. Carr. That's what they mean. Like it's everything. It's the smell, it's the texture, it's everything sensory that you're walking into for that period of time during your appointment and you're walking out. And for me, that has been the biggest contrast in the spaces that I create is that I don't feel that it needs to be this sterile type traditional dentally environment. I like it to be an expression of whatever vibe is that you want to create.
So my wheels are turning. I'm just trying to figure out all of this because I think about all of the trends that have gone through over the years in orthodontics, at least those that I've been exposed to, from maybe like a really nice beverage bar or ice cream. There were ice cream machines that some doctors would give out, or photo booth. Yeah, all the things. And I think I've been in those practices where those elements are there, but they don't match, or it's just disjointed.
Yeah.
What advice would you have for an orthodontist to kind of create that vibe? What's necessary for that to happen?
Honestly, Scott, I would tell you it's probably the one thing that makes people the most uncomfortable, which is to be authentic to themselves. I think so many of us will look to peers and feel like we have to keep up somehow, and want to copy. And it's okay to copy a good idea if you feel like that's something that really excites you. But to take a moment and sit down and be like, what speaks to me, right? Who am I? What kind of environment and experience am I trying to create for the people who are coming into my clinic? How do I want my team to be? What are the priorities? What is our culture? Do we even have a culture? These are where, like everything else is the icing, but the cake is what matters, right? And so the cake is the deeper questions that I think need to be answered so that you don't have this weird hodgepodgey thing going on. But unfortunately, many of us, it's easier to just put some frosting over something and try to make it a distracting thing. And you can use that analogy for anything. You could use it for your personal relationship, your romantic relationships, anything. You really need to have a sense of self. You need to know what you like, and more importantly, you need to know what you don't like. And you may need guidance. You may have a vision and not necessarily know how to execute it. And there's professionals for that to help you guide that. But I really do tell people to hesitate jumping on every single bandwagon of every single trend that comes out. You know what I mean? No offense to the moss wall, by the way. Like the moss wall is the foliage wall, or the selfie wall they're all great things. Like when I first saw it and heard it, but it's okay to like evolve. You're evolving as a person. Why shouldn't your office evolve too?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, sometimes in some offices that it just doesn't work. I feel like it's there so Homer Simpson or the orthodontist can just slowly disappear away into the moss wall. But yeah, totally agree. I've always said that an office, the vibe, the culture is a term I've used around that, is truly just a reflection of the doctor's heart. And so it's who the doctor really is. And it's easy to walk into a practice and see, you know what, this is all about, that you can quickly tell that this is here because the doctor is not here to serve the patients are here to serve that doctor. And you can get that. You can get that off the vibe, off the team, off how everyone treats one another. And I just love that you said it's those who are authentic. It's one of the things that why we're so particular about who we partner with, especially in Smile Doctors, of who are the people who are going to represent us well all across the board, that I want my name affiliated with. That how are they going to take care of others? How are they going to treat them? Are they going to bend over backwards to make sure that this teenager has incredible influences over the next 18, 24 months, whatever treatment is, as they go about these changes, in their life, and we can be an awesome influence on that and serve them in the best way possible. But definitely it all becomes a part of the feel and how warm it is.
Yeah.
You're famous for that. I love that. One of the things you mentioned was frosting. You can put frosting and cover up anything. And I'll submit a really graphic photo here. We can put it up on the screen, but it's one that I've always talked about that yeah, if you can put frosting on dog crap, but still no one wants any of that.
No.
And I took a picture of my dog, helped me out with it, and have a little photo. But yeah, it's ugly. No, I have it. Yeah. It is something I refer to often. Just in talking about whether who are you interpersonally, and are you willing to face some of your inauthenticities to come forward and be real, in relationships, all relationships, personal, business, in all aspects, and really looking in the mirror at yourself.
Yeah. So, all through, since I became an orthodontist and practicing, I've been surrounded by so many amazing people, but so many times I would walk into a conference, a meeting, and I truly felt like so out of place. I just felt like maybe, I don't know, I tend to be, my kids just saw Inside Out too. And, they were like, Mom, you're Joy, like I'm not Joy character. Like I thank goodness I'm wired as a pretty happy person and a have full type person, which is nice, but I also have things about me that I know are not maybe what a lot of other orthodontists are like, you know what I mean? Like I listen to my music in the clinic extra loud. I may bust out with a move once in a while. Like there's things about me, I started my own line of grills called Krills. And I like to do things that maybe is not like traditionally what other orthodontists do. And just for a short amount of time, I hesitated. And I don't know if it was just because I was already older at the time. And I kind of got to that point where I was like, I don't want to change the things about myself that I like. You know what I mean? And it's okay that I don't see much of that. Although since then I have, but because I feel like I opened my eyes to it and my heart to it. But I just realized it's okay. It's okay for me to accept all the things about myself that I personally like a lot, I'm proud of, and I feel like adds a lot of joy to my experience, but also my team's experience, being in this amazing field that we're in, and just let go of all these ideas that I have. And I still see that when I talk to other doctors, is they have some of them, we all have this idea of maybe what things should look like, or we have an idea of how our staff should always talk to us, or we have this idea, we have these expectations, you know what I mean? And this brings me back to project management. You're when you do project management, right? When we have these like huge long graphs where we like chart rain days and we chart like for efficiency and stuff like that. It only works if you've got a team that is willing to believe in the mission. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter how great that graph is. You know what I mean? You got to have people around you that are committed to that project, right? And so one of the things that I said once, and I feel like at the time was really controversial, is my number one focus when I'm in clinic is actually not my patients. And I know people are like, what did she just say? No, they're not my number one focus. My number one focus is my team. I will give anything for my team. I've got your back. I genuinely love you. If you're having a bad day, I want to know why. And we'll talk about the blurred lines between personal life and professional life, because I learned that the hard way. Not the hard way, but I learned that in a real life way. But they are my number one focus. How can I make your experience better? How can I make you feel empowered? How can I make you feel valued in this environment? Because that does then reflect onto my patient. I don't even have to worry about that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, music to my ears. It is so true, because I think we can impact the most who we directly come in contact with the most, who are then going to, touch and influence our patients.
Yeah.
It is our team. It absolutely is our team. And it has to be. And as a recovering perfectionist, you mentioned some of these things. I really had to overcome a lot of expectation that I had for myself. This was just kind of my life's journey of just trying to overachieve to accomplish certain things, and I had to look a certain way, and just growing up the way that I did, it was a huge challenge.
Yeah.
And I had to overcome this and then get real and be okay with not being perfect in every single area. And I think orthodontists, sometimes we struggle with that, where everything has to be perfect, perfect, perfect. And we look past all the good and only to see what's broken, what's wrong. Even the way that we diagnose some patients that come in, we go right to what's wrong. And it's like, okay, 12-year-old class 2 malocclusion, severe crowding, deep bite, blah, 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 all these things, instead of going, oh no, like, okay, 12-year-old girl, incredible potential, great facial, all of the awesome things. And all we got to do is tweak a few things here and there, increase her, their facial needs, all of this to have this come together. It's very interesting how we just focus on the negative, and we do that in areas of life, and it's a horrible way to live. And I can be the first.
And we do it to ourselves, and we do it to our teammates. And I hear this all the time. They're like, well, so-and-so is da-da-da, and so-and-so is da-da-da. And then they'll like let that person go. And yes, there are some people that maybe don't fit within your culture right now. They're just not ready for it. They're on their own journey. And I think it's important to recognize that and have the leadership to know when to part ways when you need to. It's like any other, I always say it's a relationship. Right? Everything is a relationship, right? I want to be in a relationship with someone who wants to be in a relationship with me. This is actually a part of my spiel to my 12-year-old, 11-year-old Invisalign patients, and braces patients. I'm like, this is a relationship. Do you want treatment? Can I help you? And they're like, no, Dr. Carr. Mom dragged me in this morning. Like, I do not want to do anything. And I'm like, cool. Come see me when you change your mind, because I will never start treatment on a child that does not want treatment. And I stopped doing that years ago. And the reason I did that is because I need your participation. I don't want to age myself prematurely. I don't want another burden on mom and dad that are already drowning in all the things they need to do. If your kid is not wanting treatment, guess what? They're not getting treatment. They need to literally tell me that they want treatment, and I'm here for you. And that way you have a teammate. And it's no different whether it's your staff or whoever. You want to make sure that they want to be on the team with you. But at the same time, I do feel like sometimes we don't invest in our teammates the way we really should. And then they don't live up to our expectation, and we just replace them. And then we find the next person has a different set of issues. And you just go down this cycle, and then you say to yourself, there's no good people out there. Like, it's never, you're not the problem. It's always like, I can't find good people. It's the same thing you hear about patients. Like, I do a lot of phase 1 with Invisalign, or, like complex cases for younger kids, and like, oh, my patients, like my patient pool, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what, you think I'm in this like magical unicorn bubble where like everyone is compliant in my particular area in Atlanta? Like, that's just not reality. It's all about, communicating, investing. Are you investing in your team? And I don't mean like throwing them a gift card and buying Starbucks. I mean, like, are you doing lunch and learns where you're actually teaching them? Are you taking time? Are you making sure that they look good in front of patients and they feel empowered? you know, we could talk about this for like hours. We could.
It's my favorite thing. No, it's my favorite thing to talk about. Absolutely. I think I heard this the other day that inside of each person, there's royalty or a fool. And depending who you talk to, that's what comes forward.
Mhm.
And so we can either build people up and they can become, royalty, king or queen, or we can talk to them as if they're the court jester, the fool, and they will,
Yeah.
they will become that. And that's what I see with team. And for me, it's the most rewarding thing. When years ago, as I was getting to know Dana Fender, I went and visited his practices probably 2011, many years ago, 2012 maybe. And I was amazed at his culture. I hadn't seen anything outside of my own office where the team was loved as much as I loved my team. And I was like, how do you do it? How do you find your people? And I'll never forget. We were in the back hallway next to his TC rooms, and he looked me dead in the eyes and he pointed right at his heart. And he said, you have to love him. You have to love me back. And you find him like that. And I went, oh my goodness, whereas so many other orthodontists are looking to find robots who just do the job and don't say anything. And it's such a missed opportunity.
Yeah, it is. It is a missed opportunity. And coming back to what you're saying, like about, you got to love them from the heart. But that also means that you're dealing with human beings that are going to go through things in their life. And I can't tell you how many times I've heard doctors say, you better check that at the door before you walk into the clinic. And it's not a real thing. I'm not saying you show up and, you're just unable to function and work, and that's a different thing. But this idea that I don't want to know anything about you. I don't want to engage in any way because this is clinic, and then that's you. It's not a real thing. And maybe it's also generational, but when I really get to know my staff, like that is much younger than me, they really appreciate it. They want me to know them. You know what I mean? They want me to know as much about them as they're willing to share. And I love that.
Yeah. And it's all a matter of us of how, and I think you were talking about this earlier about how you got burned blurring personal and business, how close you get with your team. But I also think you can set a standard among the team where this is a professional environment. Yeah. And we don't bring petty drama, but we know people go through things and we're here for you and we're here to grow and get better.
Yeah. I never, I'll tell you, Scott, I never got burned, but so back in 2000, so I've been married 16 years. My husband and I tried to start a family for 10 years of it. And I have a really serious condition. It's not typically serious, but mine is kind of severe. It's called endometriosis. And basically it just means my uterus is not a friendly place. And so I, they were like, you can adopt, you can do a surrogate. There were all these different options available to me. But after 10 years of that journey, which was very private, no one knew, like definitely none of my patients knew, my staff didn't even know. Mark and I, my husband and I decided to just we're like, you know what, we need a break from all this. Like, we're just gonna, enjoy our nieces and nephews. And I got pregnant out of the blue. I got pregnant with twins. And so everyone, obviously, when you're pregnant, it's a very public thing. And obviously my staff, every single patient of a busy clinic knew that I was pregnant, and they knew I was pregnant with twins. Well, we hit 34 weeks and we lost Ella. And Ella was the twin that was thriving the entire pregnancy. They were fraternal twins. And so Ella was thriving and Aria, who just turned 6 last week, she was my little nugget that I always worried about. And so because I went for a routine ultrasound and they told me that Ella had passed, they rushed me to the hospital and I had an emergency C-section. So and Aria did great, spent a couple months at the NICU, but she did amazing. She's our little warrior. But here's where I learned a lesson. So I had tried to really kind of be that person. Like there's this division, right? So you come back to the clinic, right? I came back to work after 8 weeks. Some patients knew what had happened and some patients didn't know. And you talk about trying to maintain a personal professional, I can't tell you how many times a day I was bear hugging with a patient, male, female, different age groups, where they were sobbing for me because of that connection that we had had. They felt like they were a part of my journey. And it hit me literally like a ton of bricks that there is no separation, that I'm a person, a human being. Yes, I'm their orthodontist or the orthodontist of their child, but they know me as a person, right? They know me as a person. We have conversations with each other and we're in each other's lives, right? And that in itself is a connection. And they felt so much of that they could also feel my pain at the time, right? And they felt so just hurt by my journey that it was just like day in and day out for months, this is what we were going through. And that's when I really that there is no separation. I was a part of their lives, even though I didn't realize it. I didn't realize how much I felt like I was a part of their lives and how much they actually cared. You know what I mean? Until something like that happened. And that's when I realized, at the time I had like a private account for Instagram and I had a public account. And I was like, forget this. Like, first of all, I don't have the time. Second of all, I'm not a very private person to begin with. So here it is. And I merged my accounts and I was like, these folks are already in my life and I'm cool with that. You know what I mean? And it was just a really interesting experience. It was a really hard experience at the time, but it just taught me that, the minute someone walks into your door, the minute that person is a part of your, family, whether it be work or whatever, you have that connection with them and you care about them and they care about you.
I agree. Man, your practice sounds amazing. Like I'd want to hang out all day and just get to know people. What a beautiful thing. As you're speaking, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I get sad hearing about it. I'm so sorry to hear that. Thank you for being so vulnerable to share the lessons you learned coming out of that. I think often, kind of the typical, we'll hear that phrase thrown around of work-life balance, and that's a tricky one for me. I heard it put work-life passion, and that really resonates with me. Of course, there's going to be things that you don't like to do, whether it's at home or at work. There's just aspects of the role that you have to do. But I have found in my life that when I'm passionate about doing whatever it is, whether it's at home, whether it's feeding or changing a baby, like I'm on my last kids right now. So we just had newborns. They're a few months old, and it's a privilege. It sounds so silly, but it's a privilege to get up and feed them at night or to have to change a diaper. I get to do that for them. I get to serve them like that. And I didn't see it that way with my other ones, but it's also I wanted, whatever I'm doing, I want to be like thrilled to be doing about it, where I have a life where I don't need to take a vacation from it or break away from something that I just like.
Absolutely.
And I think too, like what you said, how we do anything is how we do everything. And that's been a big one. I hammer that into my kids' heads all the time, of whether you're going to give full effort or you're going to dog it on something, or you're going to be inauthentic. And I think I'm on a mission personally, just of self-mastery, to try and be authentic in every single facet of my life and with people. And I just am so inspired by you and your example to be true to who you are and love it. Share that with all the people at work, those closest to you, your patients at home. So it's just beautiful. What a beautiful life you're living. I love it.
I appreciate it. Well, I have been blessed with amazing people. I'm surrounded by, it's funny because my husband and I had this like argument, and we don't argue a lot, but he was like, Farah, we're Persian. So our normal talking already sounds like yelling anyways. So he's like, Farah, you already have enough going on. You're you're doing this, you're doing this. I'm like, you need to slow down. And I was like, I know. And by the way, I'm the president of the Women's Orthodontic Association of Georgia. He's like, have you lost your mind? And I'm like, listen. And he gets this because he's the same way. I was like, I now will do things that bring me joy. And because it brings me joy, I have to make time for it, and I have to carve out time, which means I need to take time away from something else. So I'm very, very protective of my time. Um, my family will always come first. My kids um, are young. I have Aria, who's 6, who was the survivor, and then Emma, my surprise baby, came 11 months later. And this is after I told you, like every doctor, no. Then my endometriosis came back with a vengeance, and I had scheduled my hysterectomy, and we found out we're pregnant with Noah, who is now 2. So I've got 3 kids that are endo. It it is, and they have such big personalities, and so we live a very loud, busy, glorious, hectic life, and I really carve out time for that, and then I carve out time, obviously, for my relationship because I'm married to my best friend, and I know I really got so lucky in that department. Um, Although if you ever meet Mark, you'll be shocked by how introverted he is. Like, he literally will not wanna talk to you, but that's a different story for another day. And then I carve out things that I'm passionate about, like talking to you guys right now, or teaching. I love teaching. Like, these are things that I carve out time for, and then, yes, I do turn down things that I'm not, and I don't feel guilty about it at all. I don't feel guilty about it because uh, I literally don't have the capacity in me anymore I don't have the time, the energy, the bandwidth, whatever terminology you want to use, to uh, add things to my life that do not spark joy. You know what I mean? I just can't.
You're maximizing your life. It's just fantastic.
Yeah,
So
for the
cool.
time that I have, and who knows how long that is.
That's right. We don't know for any of us. It's
Yeah.
incredible.
But I will say, Scott, having parents that are literally the masters of authenticity. My dad, he's a, we're first generation immigrants, right? So my parents left Iran during the Iraq war, and my dad was an engineer, was doing very well, and my mom was a CPA in Iran, and they were doing very well. But when you leave during war, you leave everything behind. And Canada was accepting immigrants at the time that were considered skilled workers, and so my dad was able to immigrate our family over there. And I was only 3 years old. But nonetheless, he couldn't work as an engineer because he couldn't speak English. So an Italian family hired him. And our cultures are very similar. And so my dad went into the pizza business forever. And you talk about authenticity. There is no sugarcoating. They will tell you, like, that is just what I grew up around. You know what I mean? Like, my dad started over probably, I would say, 4 times his entire life, once from Iran, then coming from Canada. He started over again when he came to the US. Then he changed careers over. And he is probably the most hardest working person I know. And they are so comfortable with failure. And I found that that's so unique because not a lot of people are. My dad always taught us that it's not like failure is bound to happen. It's all about how you respond to it and how quickly you're able to dust yourself off and go. And then also just telling you like it is. I grew up with parents who always told me like it is. I always I tell my staff that it's really helped me with so-called Karens, because I never had the nice, loving parent. That's not what their generation felt that was necessary for me. It was to tell me like it like it really is. And so nobody offends me. No, if you're going to be offended, then you won't be able to sit with my dad for more than 10 minutes. You know what I mean? Because if you start complaining about anything, he'll tell you what's wrong with you. And how this is a you problem or how good you have it. And so it's really helped me be able to navigate even what are so-called difficult patients, which is not even a real thing, but nonetheless, it really, when you're around people that are so just what you see is what you get, it makes it really, really easy to, sniff out fakeness and also, to really try to strive for that.
Yeah. In all areas. What amazing parents you have and examples they've been. To start over 4 times, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah.
So your patients have an awesome patient experience when they come to your office. and it's all part of your design. And one of the things that I was super impressed with was often an area that's overlooked almost in every single office, every restaurant, just about, except for the really good ones. And it's how you design your bathrooms for your patients and for the parents.
Yeah.
Tell us a little about that. Like what went into it? Why did you choose that to put such a special touch there?
So here's the thing. When I go to a public place and I use the bathroom and I come back, if I'm typically with friends or whatnot, I may make a comment about it. And a lot of times my friends will do the same thing. Be like, "Oh, that was a really beautiful bathroom," or "Don't use that bathroom. It's gross." We just naturally do that. And I think that it's one of those areas that is really judgy. So I wanted to create, having a research background, I was like, I got to do a little experiment. So I put together a quick, just multiple choice and gave it to all of the parents that came into my clinic and also anyone that was like 18 and older. Like I didn't want to ask minors. So they would, I think the original number was like 280 people responded. And without doubt, the question was very simple. What inspires the most emotion, whether it be positive or negative in this orthodontic space, right? Or like an orthodontic dentally environment. And that was the key. It was like, what inspires the most emotion, whether it be positive or negative? And every single person said it was the bathroom. And it's because it could go horribly wrong, right? It could be like you could have this amazing experience with the clinic, whatever. And then you go into the bathroom and you're like, whoa, like no one's like looking over this or taking care of it. And so then I knew, that this is really a thing. And this is where a lot of places drop the ball. It's a small space, so it's easy to get right. You can do anything you want in a small space. You can do the loudest wallpaper. You can go nuts in that small space to make it super expressive because it's considered an accent space, or like you hear the term accent furniture or accent art. It's a short experience, get in and get out. So obviously the number one rule is cleanliness. It doesn't have to be cute, but if it's clean, great, bonus points. It has to be super clean, and you can't just clean it once a day. As a team, you need to be constantly, it can't be just one person, like you constantly. So I never use our staff bathroom. I use the patient bathroom. I want to know what my patients are experiencing. I go in there, I already have a Windex and a wipe underneath the console, and I'm out there making sure it's beautiful because it reflects everything about our clinic. And my staff does the same thing. It's so important. So once you have cleanliness down, now it gets exciting where you can get creative. You know what I mean? And express your whatever vibe you're trying to create for that space. And cleanliness and the decor is very important. Obviously, you want to make sure the basics are working, your toilet, your sink, all that stuff is working, but also consider smell. And you want to make sure that all those things are working really well, because whether you like it or not, or you know it or not, you are being judged by it. It's leaving an impression, and it's making people create a narrative about their experience and a narrative about you and your team and how competent you are and how clean everything else is in the clinic, even the instruments you're using in their mouth. It is all linked together.
Totally agree. Talk us through a little bit about the design. What were you thinking through with this one?
So I personally, being an art major, I love color. And I feel like sometimes when we come into clinics, we're like gray tones and just like white and like very like shaded. Like, no, not necessarily for a bathroom. You could, and that's fine. But you really have an opportunity to go wild. So wallpaper, loud wallpaper, love it. A vanity that maybe pulls one of your favorite colors from that wallpaper onto the vanity. Do it. Accent of gold. If you're feeling it, do it. If you don't know what you're feeling, hire someone that's going to help you on that journey, because there are people, they're called interior designers, that will literally have studied this and can help you with that. But don't drop the ball on your bathroom.
Yes. I think too often, again, I've been in a lot of locations, a lot of offices all around the country. And sometimes it's like, that's where the budget gets cut. and there's cheap VCT tile and construction grade lighting. And oftentimes that's where you store all the extra UPS boxes, and it's a mess in there. And yeah, just poorly lit, poor circulation, and it's brutal.
It's brutal.
And
They say,
yeah,
there was I can't remember. It was like 8, 9 years ago. I went to a talk, and what they were talking about is basically that everything communicates, right? Like everything communicates. That box behind the front desk that you're waiting to put away later is communicating something. And so, if you think about it with that lens, and sometimes you become numb to that narrative because you're in it every day. It may not be a bad idea to bring in people, maybe even from your own life or outside, or even have, give your patients like gift cards and be like, hey, I want you to be like uber critical and come in and give you feedback, about your office, about your space, you know, um, it's so important to make sure that you are seeing things through their lens, and you're not missing, um, these low-hanging fruit that could be easily corrected, and really make for a better experience.
yep. We just get used to it. We get accustomed to the paint chip on the wall, and the busted up corner that just happened to get nicked and dinged, and we stop seeing it.
Yeah.
But like you said, I think patients judge us. They don't know what a class one occlusion is really.
No.
They don't know what proper overjet overbite is. And so they're trying to figure out, do I like this? Do I like this place? Do I feel good here?
Yeah.
And they're going to judge us by how particular are we about the space that we're in. I hands down totally agree.
Yeah.
Totally
And
agree.
there's so much opportunity. And now there's just such great resources. You can Pinterest anything. You can be on all these different, just for inspiration. You know what I mean? And I had a doctor, he asked me to help him with his practice, and he had just finished with, he had been in the military forever. And he was in the Air Force, and he loved the Georgia Bulldogs. Big Georgia Bulldog fan. And he was like, talking about design. I was like, how are we going to incorporate, some of this stuff for him, And so one thing we decided to do, like Etsy does a lot of beautiful custom work. So we found this carpenter on Etsy that makes these beautiful, beautiful American flags that are made from different species of wood, and puzzles it together. And it was this huge art piece that we had for his office to kind of go along with some of the pictures of him, flying these jets, and just kind of giving people that story about him. And then for his guest bathroom, I found a Georgia Bulldog wallpaper that was like the cutest thing. And we just wrapped everything around with it with some gold. I mean, I'm sorry, not gold, the red accent mirror and everything. And it was just so cute. Like people will walk into it and they're like, yes, like, and that was his vibe. You know what I mean? Like something so simple, So like I said, Scott, it takes a minute to kind of sit back and be like, okay, where am I practicing? Okay. Like what interests me, or my team, or the community as a whole, who knows, whatever you think would fit better for your space. But, thinking outside the box is really what you're trying to do, and not trying to just follow what everyone else is doing. You know what I mean? Because to me, that's the most trendiest thing you can do. The most trendiest thing is to do you.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, that is amazing advice on how to live, how to practice, and really how to kill it. And it's been the secret to your success. I want to thank you so much for your authenticity, for sharing, being so vulnerable with us today, of sharing the true you and who you are. And it just makes me, and I'm sure every listener now, wanted to get to know you, know you better. So
thank you, Scott. Thank you for inviting me. I really enjoyed it.
Yep. So you have an incredible Instagram following from what I'm seeing. So where can we follow you? Where can we learn more about you?
Oh my goodness. So my cool sister, who's a decade younger than me, started my Instagram account years ago and named me the Ortho Queen.
Okay.
So I'm a verified account. So I was So when I finally thought I'm going to have a grown-up name now handle, you can't change it unless you go through the verified process all over again. And I'm way too lazy for that. So I'm the ortho queen. And my patients follow me, and patients that I treated years ago, and they just see all of it. I have photos and videos of my family, of office, of treatments I do, and they message me if they're having an emergency, if they have a question, if someone needs a consult. It's just a great way I have found for me personally to stay connected. I just had a lunch date with twins that I treated about 6-7 years ago, and who just graduated from high school, and they came out and we had lunch together because we just stay in touch, and I just love staying in touch with people. So yeah, reach out.
Okay, can't wait. Yeah, pick up some followers after this. So it is an honor to speak with you. It's an honor to be partnered with you in Smile Doctors, and I appreciate all you give to the profession and to all your patients and team. Thank you.
I appreciate you guys. Thanks.
Yep.